Argalia is one of the most powerful characters in the Project Moon universe. To understand just how strong he is, I'll be breaking it down using both the story elements and gameplay mechanics from the game. But first, let's talk about who Argalia actually is, especially for those who aren't familiar with Library of Runa. Before diving into his power, it's important to understand his backstory and his role in the game's narrative. Once we've got a clear picture of that, we can move on to exploring the full extent of his strength. Not much is known about Argalia's past, other than the fact that he and his sister, Angelica, were subjects of experiments before eventually escaping. After Angelica was killed by the pianist, Argalia lost his sanity and began hearing what he calls the voice. This voice pushed him toward a goal, to free the world from what he saw as unbearable loneliness. Argalia follows this voice relentlessly and ends up blaming Roland for his sister's death. In a way, much of what happens throughout the game is driven by Argalia, either directly or indirectly. His actions, his influence, and the chaos he sets in motion become central obstacles we face throughout the story. When it comes to Argalia's abilities, his most important and powerful trait is undoubtedly his speed. He is so fast that he can dodge bullets as if they are nothing, but it doesn't stop there. He can even deflect bullets mid-air. Just from this alone, we can tell his reaction time and movement speed are at least faster than a bullet. One clear example of this is his encounter with the Full Stop Office. Think of them as a heavily armed elite squad. When these Full Stop fixers attacked the Church of Gears, they ended up facing Argalia, but he effortlessly dodged their gunfire and defeated them with ease. Even when they tried to retreat, Argalia appeared behind them in an instant, showing just how overwhelming his speed truly is. And that's just one of the things he's capable of. Now let's talk about his attack potency and destructive capacity. Argalia isn't the type of character who relies on brute force right out of the gate. He operates more from the shadows, manipulating events, catching people off guard, and only using his full power when absolutely necessary. But that doesn't mean he's weak. In fact, he is easily one of the strongest color fixers, right after Red Mist and Purple Tear. You might be wondering, just how powerful are color fixers? Well, fixer grades aren't linear. They work more like the Richter scale. The difference between grade 2 and grade 1 isn't just a small jump, it's exponential, and colors are beyond even that. It's not purely based on physical strength either, so two grade 1 fixers can be wildly different in ability, but what they all have in common is that they're insanely powerful. Take Purple Tear, for example. During your fight with Vergilius, she destroyed multiple buildings in the process, and considering color fixers are generally on the same level, it's fair to say Argalia could easily level several buildings with a single attack if he chose to. We also see in his battle with Roland that Argalia has absurd stamina. He can fight non-stop for days without slowing down. He has the power to slice a person and clean in half with just one strike. Before we compare Argalia more directly with Roland, we need to understand the true scale of the city. In the Project Moon universe, the city isn't just a city in the traditional sense. It's more comparable to a small country in size. Based on its map and structure, we can estimate that the city is roughly the size of Switzerland, and that's without even accounting for the advanced space warping and dimension expanding technologies present throughout the city. When you factor those in, it's reasonable to assume that each district is the size of a major metropolis on its own. Now, let's bring Roland into this. He defeated the pianist Distortion, a being that was capable of nearly wiping out an entire city. So if Roland at full power was able to fight Argalia for an entire week, that alone tells us that Argalia could also deal with a distortion on the same level as the pianist without much trouble. In other words, Argalia, like Roland, has city-level power. Let's circle back to Library of Runa. From Ares' key page story, we learned that even standard fixers are capable of superhuman feats, carrying power poles with one hand, moving at incredible speeds, even leaping across multiple city blocks in a fraction of a second. Based on that, we can reasonably scale an average fixer to at least multi-city block level. And since color fixers are far beyond normal fixers in every way, it's safe to say that they operate at city level power or higher. Another major aspect of Argalia's strength is his mind. He is utterly insane, yet incredibly intelligent and highly persuasive. From nothing, he managed to gather Roland's former enemies and form a group known as the Reverberation Ensemble. Not only did he create this group from scratch, but he also raised it to Star of the City status. Under Argalia's leadership, the ensemble was strong enough to destroy Section 1 of the Hana Association's southern branch and even defeat a color fixer known as the Vermilion Cross. On top of that, they managed to breach the library's barrier and force their way inside, a level of power very few groups have ever reached. The key takeaway here is that Argalia built this group in a short period of time, pushing them to the highest ranks of the city's hierarchy. This shows just how determined and relentless he is in pursuit of his goals. From his battle with Roland, we see that once Argalia sets his sight on someone, he will stop at nothing to bring them down, using every tool, tactic, and trick at his disposal. Another interesting aspect of Argalia is that he most likely accomplished everything he did without using Shin or Mang. That said, we can't say this with absolute certainty. Why the dot? In the Project Moon universe, characters who reach a certain level of power often gain access to Shin and Mang, but since Limbus Company is still ongoing and the story hasn't fully unfolded yet, we don't have the complete picture. Now, here is what makes this relevant. In order to use Shin, a person must first clear their mind of all emotions, then reach into their most intense memories, allowing the emotions tied to those memories to completely take over their mind. That's exactly where the problem with Argalia begins. Shin requires complete mental silence and emotional clarity, but Argalia is someone who can stand silence. He is obsessive, unstable, and constantly driven by the voice in his head. With that level of mental chaos and fixation, it's hard to imagine him being able to tap into a state calm enough to use Shin. Let's talk about Argalia's durability. Based on his week-long, evenly matched battle with Roland, it's safe to say Argalia has city-level durability. What makes this even more impressive is that he doesn't need Shin to enhance his body, meaning this level of endurance comes purely from his own physical resilience. However, Argalia has a major weakness. He is completely vulnerable to mental or psychological attacks. And by that, I mean his natural enemy is silence itself. He has zero resistance to it. To cope with this, he wears a device on his ear that constantly emits sound, because Argalia simply cannot stand silence. Earlier in the video, I talked about how insanely fast Argalia is. But now, it's time to show you his most broken ability, the Blue Reverberation. Yeah, you're not seeing things. This is real. Argalia is completely immune to all ranged attacks. Why? Because he vibrates his body at such an absurd speed that any projectile, and I mean any projectile, either misses him completely or gets deflected before it even touches him. Bullets? Useless. Energy blasts? Pointless. You throw anything at him from a distance, he's untouchable. This is when you realize
you're not fighting with him anymore. You're just surviving.
If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe if you did. Until next time.